Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in the fun. For today's tutorial, we're going cozy casual. With a tri-textured cold shoulder ruffle top, that's the perfect way to practice your mesh, moss, and lemon peel stitches while making something cute. Speaking of, by now y'all already know the drill, but just in case you're new. The cutest modern crochet tutorials and patterns are here with even more dropping twice weekly, so tell a friend and consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 245 grams of yarn. That's 550 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5.5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you like to turn on music while you clean or if you clean in silence. Music for sure, mainly so I can sing while vacuuming. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size and explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5.5mm hook and start off by making an odd number chain that starts 1 inch underneath our underarm down to where the bottom of this top to be, so this can be cropped or full length. I'd like for mine to be full length, so I'm going to start by making a chain 55, and that's just about 14 inches or 36 centimeters. So we are back. Our chain is complete. Before we get started on our row 1, we're going to section off our piece. Our piece is going to have 3 sections. It's going to start with mesh stitch along the bottom. The middle is going to be lemon peel, and the top is going to be moss stitch, single crochet repeats. Now counting from the hook, insert your stitch marker into any odd numbered stitch from where the hook is for the space that you'd like for the mesh stitch section to be. Then, for the lemon peel stitch section, whatever is left from our mesh stitch marker stitch up to the top, we're going to insert our stitch marker into that third to last stitch from our chain. We all need to have 2 chains at the very end for every size just so our increases can be the same. Now for those of you that have my numbers, I went ahead and inserted my first stitch marker into the 33rd stitch from my hook. Then from this stitch marker up to the top, which we should all have 2 stitches left, that's a total of 20 stitches for me. This should be an even number of stitches, then the last 2 chains. Now that our stitch markers are into place, we're all going to get started on our first row, and it's going to start with mesh stitches. So let's all block off that last chain. Once we have, we're all going to chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a single crochet. So insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. After that single crochet, we're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next. So far for this row, we should all have a total of 3 stitches. That first is that single crochet, second is that chain space, third is that single crochet. Again, we're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next. Continue on with our mesh stitch until we are worked into our following stitch marker stitch. So we have just made our way up with our mesh stitches. Now we are worked into that stitch marker stitch. We always want to make sure that we're inserting our stitch marker into the top of that stitch. Now that our stitch marker is into place, from that following stitch all the way until we're worked into our following stitch marker stitch is going to be our lemon peel stitches. That's going to be 1 single crochet into 1 stitch, 1 double into the next, and just continue to alternate. So just into that next available chain, insert, starting with 1 single crochet. Into that following, insert with a double crochet. So insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. Just once more into that following chain, insert with a single, Then into that following with a double crochet. So insert, pull through 2, and pull through 2. Continue on with this until we're worked into our following stitch marker stitch, and that stitch that's worked into there should be a double crochet for everyone. So we are back. We have just completed the lemon peel stitch section. Now we should all have 2 stitches left. That last stitch should have been worked into that stitch marker stitch, and we always want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into that same stitch, which should have been a double crochet for everyone. Now we're going to do our moss stitch section, and that's going to start with some increases. So what we're going to do is start with a chain 1. So like I said, chain 1, we're going to skip that second to last stitch, and into the last we're going to do our increase, which into that last chain is just going to be 1 single, 1 half double, and also 1 double crochet all into that last stitch. Now our row 1 is complete. We should all have 2 more stitches than chains that we made. Now we're only going to be increasing at the end of every odd number row. So our chain 2, we are not going to do any increases. Now since we're along the top, we're going to start this following row off with our moss stitch section. And whenever we're starting our row with our moss stitches, we're going to start with a chain 2. That first chain is going to count as our turning chain. Then that second chain is actually going to count as our first stitch for the following row. So when we have that chain 2, flip our work. We're all going to skip that first stitch and into the next, insert with a single crochet. Now so far for this row, we should have 2 stitches. We want to make sure that we're not missing out on that first stitch, which is that chain space, because it can very easily be overlooked for the following rows. Once we have that chain space single crochet, again, we're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, and into the next stitch, which is our chain space, insert with a single crochet. Now from here, we have reached our stitch marker, and now we're going to do our lemon peel stitch detail. So into that following stitch, which should be our stitch marker stitch for everyone so far, start with our single crochet. Don't forget to insert your stitch marker into the top of that stitch. Then into that following stitch, insert with a double crochet. From here, continue alternating between a single crochet and double crochet until we're worked into the stitch right before our following stitch marker stitch. And just as a really quick tip, when it comes to doing our lemon peel stitches, our single crochets will be worked into the top of our previous row's double crochets, and our double crochets will be worked into the top of our previous row's single crochets to get the texture that we want. So our lemon peel stitch section is completed. Now we're going to do our mesh stitch section. So we're worked into the stitch that's right before our stitch marker stitch. Into that following, start with a single crochet. So into that stitch marker stitch, insert with a single, and don't forget to insert your stitch marker into the top of the stitch. From here, we're simply going to chain 1, skip a stitch, into that next stitch with a single crochet. Now when it comes to doing our mesh stitch, we're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, which should always be our chain on top of our previous row's chain space, and then we're going to single crochet into the top of our previous row's single crochet to reach the end of the row. We are back, and we have just completed our first 2 rows. Now, some really quick tips before we get started on the following rows. The mesh stitch detail and the lemon peel stitch detail is always going to be the same as our 2 previous rows. So our mesh stitch detail is always going to have the same amount of stitches. The lemon peel stitches is always going to have the same amount of stitches. The only thing that's changing is going to be the top half, because that's where our moss stitch / single crochet rows are going to be, plus our increases for this section. And also, when it comes to doing this detail, it will be 2 moss stitch rows and 1 single crochet row. Our following row is our 3rd row, so at the end of the row, we're going to do our single crochets, which I will talk you guys through. But just to let you guys know, since this is a 3-row repeat, since it's 2 moss, 1 single crochet row, sometimes our single crochet rows are going to start from the bottom, and sometimes our single crochet rows are going to start from the top, working our way down. I will do each of those examples with you just to make sure that we all have it down. So for us all to get started on our row 3, since we're along the bottom, we're all going to chain 1 and flip. We're going to start with a single crochet into that first stitch from our previous row. Chain 1, skip a stitch, which should be our chain space from our previous row, single crochet into the next stitch, which is our single crochet from our previous row, and continue to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next until we're worked into our stitch marker stitch, and don't forget to insert our stitch marker into the top of that stitch. We've just made our way up with our mesh stitch section. We're worked into our stitch marker stitch, and we all made sure to insert our stitch marker into the top of that stitch. Now we're going to do our lemon peel stitch section. So into that following stitch, simply insert with a single crochet, into that following stitch with a double crochet. Then just continue to alternate between a single and double crochet until we're worked into our following stitch marker stitch. Our lemon peel stitch detail is complete. We are worked into that stitch marker stitch. We made sure to insert a stitch marker into the top of that stitch. Now from here, since we're doing our moss stitch single crochet row repeat, and this is the third row, we're going to start with one single crochet into every stitch, leaving that last one. Now for everyone so far, since we're nearly completed with our row 3, we should have all done 1, 2, 3 single crochets, and we should all have one stitch left, which is that first chain space from our previous moss stitch section. Into that stitch, we're going to increase the same way that we did for our row 1. So insert into there with one single, same stitch with one half, and one double. Now this row should have 2 more stitches than our previous row. Now our following row, our even number rows, are not going to have any increases or decreases. And we're going to start our following row, our row 4, with our moss stitch detail. Now like I said, whenever we're starting our row with our moss stitch, we're always going to chain 2. Now we're going to do our moss stitch until we're worked into the stitch right before our stitch marker. Now our moss stitch, we're going to skip that first stitch, into the next, insert with a single crochet. Again, chain 1, skip a stitch, into that next stitch, a single crochet, and since we're all together, chain 1, into that next, single crochet, into that next stitch. Now we should be worked into the stitch right before our stitch marker stitch. Now from here, we're going to do our same exact lemon peel stitch detail that we've been doing this whole time. So just into that following stitch, which is our stitch marker stitch, one single crochet, into that next, double crochet, and don't forget to insert your stitch marker into the top of that first stitch. And just continue to alternate between a single and double crochet, making our way down until we're worked into the stitch before our stitch marker stitch. Now 2 really quick tips. When it comes to doing our top detail, which is our 2 moss stitch rows, 1 single crochet row, our moss stitch rows are done very similarly to our mesh stitch rows. The only difference is that when we're doing our moss stitch row on top of a moss stitch row, our single crochets are going to be worked into our previous row's chain space. Whereas for the mesh stitch row, it is a single crochet on top of a single crochet and a chain space on top of a chain space. And lastly, for every even number row, when we're working our way down, we're just going to do each of our sections until we're worked into the stitch before our stitch marker stitch. Whereas for our odd number rows, when we're working our way up, we will be working into that stitch marker stitch just to make sure we have the same amount of stitches per section for each row. Go ahead and get this lemon peel stitch detail completed, and then I'll meet you back. Our lemon peel stitch detail is complete. We're worked into the stitch right before our following stitch marker stitch. Now complete the row with our same mesh stitch detail that we've been doing. So just into that following stitch, insert with a single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet to reach the end of the row, and don't forget to insert your stitch marker into the top of that following stitch. Our first 4 rows are completed. Now to get started on our row 5, we're going to chain 1, flip our work. Do our same mesh stitch detail until we're worked into our stitch marker stitch, then do our same lemon peel stitch detail till we're worked into our following stitch marker stitch. Then I'll meet everyone back to do the top half. We've made our way up with our row 5, and now we're ready to do our moss stitch detail. So right after that last stitch for our lemon peel stitch detail, we're all going to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next. So all we're going to do, like I said, chain 1, skip a stitch, which should be our single crochet from our previous row, into that next, which should be our chain space, insert with a single crochet, then just continue to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next until we all have 2 stitches left. So now that we have made our way down, we should all have 1, 2 stitches left. That last stitch is that chain space from our previous row. We're going to increase since we're at the end of our odd number row. So chain 1, skip a stitch, which should be the single crochet from our previous row, then into that last stitch, into that chain space, insert with a single, half double, and double. Now that our row 5 is complete, let's get started on our row 6. Now, like I said, our top section detail is 2 moss stitch rows, 1 single crochet row. So that means every third row is going to be a single crochet row. Our following row is row 6, so to get started on the following section, which is going to be all single crochets, we're going to chain 1 and flip. And we are not increasing into this row since it is an even number row, so start with 1 single crochet into every stitch until we're worked into the stitch before our stitch marker stitch. So our single crochets are completed. We all should have a total of 8 since we're working on row 6. Now we're going to do our lemon peel stitch detail, then our mesh stitch detail, then I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So we are back and our first 6 rows are completed. Now it is going to be a repeat of these 6 rows until we get our underarm portion. But I'm actually going to be doing the following 3 rows together with you because when we got started on our moss stitch single crochet section, we didn't quite talk about the moss stitches as much as I would like, just to make sure that we all have it down. So just to get started on the following row, we're going to chain 1 and flip our work, do our mesh stitch detail and also our lemon peel stitch detail, then I'll meet you back when we're about to get started on our following moss stitch section. We are back. We have just made our way up with our row 7 and we're about to do our following moss stitch detail together. So since it's basically a repeat of our row 1, right after that last lemon peel stitch row, we're all going to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next. Then we're going to continue to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next until we all have 2 stitches left. And now that we have these 1, 2 stitches left, we're going to increase since this is the end of an odd number row. So chain 1, skip a stitch, and into the next, which should be the last stitch from our previous row, we're all going to insert with a single, half double, and double crochet. Now our row 7 is complete. Now let's get started on our row 8. So chain 2, first chain is going to count as our turning chain, second chain is going to count as our first stitch for our following row, and flip our work. Skip that first stitch, into the next, insert with a single crochet. Again, chain 1, skip a stitch into that next stitch, which should be our chain space from our previous row. It's a little hard to see, but it is there. Insert with a single crochet. From here, continue to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into that next until we're worked into our stitch right before our stitch marker stitch. We have just completed our second moss stitch row. From here, do our same lemon peel stitch detail, then mesh towards the end of the row. Then I'll meet you back. Alrighty, our first 8 rows are completed. Now we're going to get the following row started. So chain 1, mesh stitch, lemon peel stitch, then I'll meet you back to finish up with our single crochets for our moss stitch single crochet detail. Alrighty, nearly complete with our row 9. We now just have our moss stitch / single crochet section to do. Start with 1 single crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one. So I just put 1 single crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one. Now the increase for this section is always going to be 1 single, 1 half, 1 double, all into that last stitch. Now from here, what we're going to do is continue to repeat our 6 previous rows until we now have a portion that can stretch from mid-underarm all the way over to the front of our underarm, so roughly a bra strap or a tank top strap would lay. Now we all need to end right after we're going to use our moss stitch and single crochet section as a reference. We all need to meet back right after we complete a single crochet row that ends along the top, so a row just like this one. Now after my first 9 rows, I'm actually ready to get started on my shoulder. So what we're going to do from here, once we have our underarm portion completed, we're all going to start by making an even number chain that can reach the top of our shoulder. Now we all want to make sure that this tail end still stays roughly 1 inch underneath our underarm because we don't want our armhole to become too big or too small. And I went ahead and already made my chain so I know the length that I need. I need roughly 4.5 inches or 11 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 18. Now that we have our chain, we're going to get started on our following row, which we're still going to be working off of the 2 moss stitch, 1 single crochet row sequence. So our following row is going to be a moss stitch row. We're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That first chain counts as our turning chain. Second chain is going to count as a stitch for our following row. Then from here, we're going to insert with a single crochet into the 4th chain from our hook. So here's 1, 2, 3 is the one we blocked off, and 4. So into that 4th, go ahead and insert with a single crochet. Then from here, continue to chain 1, skip a chain, single crochet into the next. Now we're just going to continue on with this, making our way all the way down our chain and also working our way into our body as well. Then once we reach our stitch marker stitch, we're going to continue on with our lemon peel and mesh stitch detail per usual. Then I'll meet you guys back at the end of the row. All right, so we have just completed our first shoulder row. Now just to get our 3-row repeat started, our following row, since we're along the bottom, is going to start with our mesh stitch detail, then our lemon peel stitch detail, then I'll meet you guys back. So we are back. We have made our way up with our second shoulder row. Now we're going to just do our moss stitch row together. Now we're just going to do our moss stitch / single crochet section together. So we should have all done our last lemon peel stitch. So all we're going to do is chain 1, skip a stitch, which should be our single crochet from our previous moss stitch row. Into that next, which is our chain space, insert with a single crochet. Again, chain 1, skip a stitch, into the next, single crochet until you reach the end of the row. So we are back and our second shoulder row is complete. Now we're still doing our 3-row repeat when it comes to doing our moss stitch single crochet detail. So remember, every third row is going to be a single crochet row. So from here, we're going to chain 1, flip our work. 1 single crochet into every stitch until we're worked into the stitch before our stitch marker stitch. Then our lemon peel stitch detail, then our mesh stitch detail per usual to reach the end of the row. Then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We have just completed our first 3 shoulder rows. Now from here, it is going to be a repeat of our 3 previous rows with absolutely no increases, no decreases for the rest of the shoulder. Now we just want to remember that sometimes our single crochet row will start along the top like how our previous one did, or it can start from the bottom like how our following one is going to. Just make sure that we're keeping the same amount of stitches per row for the shoulder portion. Now, like I said, continue on with these non-increase, non-decrease rows until we now have a portion that can reach roughly 1 inch away from the side of the base of our neck. Then I will meet everyone back right after a single crochet row that ends along the bottom, so pretty much like this one, and then we can get started on the neckline together from there. So we are back. We have just completed the shoulder portion. Now, I have a total of 18 rows. My width is just about 4 inches or 10 centimeters. Now, from here, we're going to do our neckline portion, which is going to be done pretty much the same way as the shoulders, but it's just going to be a little bit shorter because we're all going to insert our stitch marker into the stitch that's nearest to the base of our neck. So, what we're going to want to do is put this piece up to ourselves, making sure that we're keeping the tail end still at 1 inch underneath our underarm. Then we're going to insert our stitch marker into any even numbered stitch from the top that's nearest to the base of our neck. Mine is in the 10th stitch, which is just about 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters. Now from here, since we already know how to do this portion, it won't have any increases or decreases. We're just going to do the following row in our row sequence. So just to talk you guys through it, we're going to do our mesh stitch all the way up, then our lemon peel stitch, then do our following moss stitch row all the way up until we reach our stitch marker. The following row is going to be our moss stitch, lemon peel, mesh stitch all the way down. Then the row after that is going to be mesh, lemon peel, then single crochets all the way up because we're still keeping with the 2 moss stitch, 1 single crochet row repeat for the top detail. Now we're all going to continue to repeat those 3 rows until we have a portion that can work our way across our chest to the other side of the base of our neck. Then I'll meet everyone back right after our second moss stitch row that ends along the top. Then we can work straight into the shoulder together from there. So we are back and we have just completed the neckline portion. Now I have a total of 41 rows. My width is just about 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters. And now from here, we're going to get started on the following shoulder portion. So since we all should have ended along the top right after our second moss stitch row, what we're going to do is make a chain for the same amount of stitches that we skipped when we got started on our neckline. For those of you that have my numbers, I skipped a total of 10 stitches. So along this side, I made a chain of 10. Now we're going to do the following row in our row sequence, which is everything's the same, but we're going to start with our single crochet row. So from where we're at, after we have our chain, we're simply going to chain 1, flip our work. We're all going to start with 1 single crochet into every chain, then 1 single crochet into every stitch until we reach our following stitch marker stitch. Then we're going to continue on with our same lemon peel, then mesh stitches all the way down. Then for this shoulder portion, it is going to be done the same way as our first shoulder portion. Now we should have the same amount of stitches as this first shoulder portion, and we're just going to continue on with our rows, remembering that we have 2 moss stitch, 1 single crochet row repeat for the top detail until we have the same amount of rows as our first shoulder portion. Once we have the same amount of rows, we should all end along the bottom. Then I'll meet you back so we can finish up with our underarm portion. We are back and we have just now completed the shoulder portion. Now my width is just about 12 inches or 30 centimeters. So what we're going to do now is our underarm portion. So first things first, we're going to insert our stitch marker into the same stitch for the same amount of chains that we made that led up to our shoulders. So for those of you that have my numbers, I made a chain 18. So along this side, I'm going to insert my stitch marker into the 18th stitch from the top. Then from here, we're going to get started on the following row, which is going to start with our mesh stitches, then our lemon peel stitches. That is all per usual. Then we're going to single crochet all the way up, leaving 3 stitches right before our stitch marker stitch. Then I'll meet you back. So we've made our way all the way up with our first underarm row, leaving 3 stitches right before our stitch marker. Now what we're going to do is a decrease of 3 double crochets. Starting with a yarn over, we're going to insert our hook into that following stitch, pull through, into that following stitch and pull through, then into that following stitch, which should be the last stitch right before stitch marker, insert, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through the first 4, then yarn over, pull through 2, and now our first underarm row is complete. Now, just like the beginning of this portion, we're going to be decreasing into every other underarm row. So the following row is going to start with our moss stitches. So we're going to chain 2, flip our work, and do our moss stitch all the way down, lemon peel stitch, closing off the row with our mesh stitches. Then just to get started on the following row, just so we know how to do each of our decreases, we're going to mesh stitch up, lemon peel stitch up, then I'll meet everyone back so that we can do our moss stitch all the way up, then our decrease as well. So we have made our way up with our third underarm row. Now from here, which it should be our next moss stitch detail, right after our lemon peel stitch detail, we're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next, which should be into that chain space, and I'll meet everyone back when we have a total of 4 stitches left. So we have made our way down with our moss stitches, and we should all have 1, 2, 3, and then 4 stitches left. That 4th stitch is that last chain space. Could be hard to see because it is collapsed in on itself, but it is there. Now what we're going to do is chain 1, because that should be the next stitch in our moss stitch sequence, skip a stitch, then close off the row with a decrease of 3 double crochets again. So yarn over, skip that following stitch into that next, which should be the 3rd to last, pull through, 2nd to last, pull through, and last, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through 4 loops, to get 2 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through 2. Now from here, we're going to just continue on with this. So as a really quick tip, we just completed our first 3 underarm rows. Our following row is going to start with single crochet section. So chain 1, flip our work, 1 single crochet into every stitch, then do our same lemon peel and mesh stitch detail to reach the end of the row. We're just going to continue on with the same underarm detail until we have the same amount of underarm rows that we started off with. Once we do a chain up 1 and cut, then I'll meet everyone back. Alrighty, so we are back. We have just completed the entirety of the front panel. Now my total width is just about 15 inches or 38 centimeters. I did do a chain up of 1 and cut right after my last row. Now once we have one of these completed, we are going to be making a second panel that is exactly the same. Then once we have both of our panels completed, I will meet everyone back so we can seam it all up together. So now that we have both of our panels completed, we're now going to seam up our sides. So first things first, we're just going to place them on top of each other, then insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then we're going to pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure, and now we're just going to single crochet in through both panels at the same time. So finding that first stitch into the front panel, insert, first stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet around everything. Again, next stitch into the front, next stitch into the back, and single crochet around everything, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way up. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So we are back. We have just completed seaming up our sides, and now we're going to seam up our shoulders. So we're going to make sure the work is still flipped right side out, meaning the seam that we did for the sides is still flipped along the outside. Then we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and back panel. Then we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and similarly to how we did our side seam, 1 single crochet in through every side row in through both panels. So finding that first side row within the front panel, find that top loop and insert. First side row within the back panel, find that top loop, insert, and single crochet around everything. Again, next side row within the front panel, insert in through that top loop. Next side row within that back panel, insert in through that top loop, and single crochet. Once more, next side row into the front panel, insert. Next side row into the back panel, find that top loop, insert, and single crochet. and continue doing this till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up one and cut, then repeat on the other side. So we are back. We have just completed seaming up both of our shoulders. Now we're just going to single crochet along the neckline. So first things first, we're going to make sure the work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to insert our hook into any one of the stitches or side rows that we have along our neckline. Then just to talk you guys through it, we're going to be putting one single crochet into every stitch and also one single crochet into every side row, making our way all the way up and around. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, slip stitch into that chain space and do a chain up one and cut. But just as a really quick tip, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch, so once one is completed, try your piece on. If it's a little too tight, we do some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, we do some stitches with a tighter grip. Then I'll meet you back. Alright, so we are back. We have just completed single crocheting along our neckline. Now we're going to do our sleeve. So this is just going to be a little sleeve ruffle details. So what we're going to do is our single crochet row first. So we're going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then insert our hook into any stitch that we have that's nearest to our side seam within the armhole. Then we're going to single crochet all the way around, and starting with our underarm portion, we are going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, starting with 2. So I did a chain up of 1 to secure. Then finding our first side row, which is this one right here for me, I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 2 single crochets. So there's 1 in that same top loop with a second. Now into our following side row, which is this one right here for me, I'm going to find this top loop and insert with just 1. And that's it. We're going to continue on doing this, making our way up until we're worked into our last side row. So we are back. We've made our way up with our single crochets. We're worked into our last side row. And what we all want to do is insert our stitch marker into that last stitch that we made, just so you know where the underarm portion starts and ends. Then from here, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every stitch, making our way all the way up and back around. Then I'll meet everyone back before we get started into our first side row. So we've just made our way all the way up with our single crochets. Now we're going to work into our first side row, working our way back down. So same rules apply, still alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, starting with 2, but we want to make sure that we have a stitch marker on this side that matches this one on this side. So into this first side row, insert with 2 single crochets. There is 1, there is 2. Insert your stitch marker into that first single crochet that you made, then continue on with the rest of the row. Once we made our way all the way down, slip stitch into that chain space, then do a chain up 1 and cut. So we are back and our single crochet row is complete. Now from here, we're going to make a chain to get started on our cold shoulder detail. So what we're going to do is make an even numbered chain that can reach the outside of our arm, so the middle. We are going to have 1 middle stitch right after this portion. Now, I'd like for this cold shoulder detail to be a little bit droopier, so I would like to show a little bit more of my arms. So I'm going to make my chain just a little bit longer. I'm going to start by making a chain 20, that's just about 4 inches or 10 centimeters. So now that we have our chain, we're all going to chain 1 additional chain. This is going to be our middle stitch, so go ahead and insert your stitch marker into there. Then complete this by making the same chain that we just made, so for me, another chain 20. So now that we have the entirety of our chain completed, we are going to slip stitch it into our stitch marker stitch. So into this other stitch marker stitch, we're going to insert, yarn over, and pull through everything. Now that slip stitch into that stitch marker stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. And from here, we can work straight into our first row. So in order to work our way up to the following row, we're going to slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, but we all want to make sure that we're working down towards the bottom and not towards the top of the shoulder. So we're just going to slip stitch into that next available stitch that we have that's working down towards the bottom. So insert, yarn over, pull through everything. Remember, those slip stitches into the base don't actually count as a stitch. Now we're going to do a single crochet row with some increases for the ruffle. Now what we're going to do from here is an increase of 2 single crochets into every chain except for that middle one. So just to do the first one, finding that last chain from our previous row, we're all going to insert with 2 single crochets. So there is 1 single crochet into that same chain with a second. From here, continue to put 2 single crochets into every chain until we reach our middle chain. So we are back. We've just made our way down our chain. We're now at our middle chain. Now into that middle chain, we're all going to do an increase of 3 double crochets. So we're going to take this out for now, but don't put this too far. Into that middle chain, insert with 3 double crochets. So there's my first, into that same chain with my second, same chain with my third, and I'm going to insert my stitch marker into that middle stitch that we made just so we know where the middle one is. Then from here, continue with 2 single crochet into every chain. Then I'll meet you back once we don't have any more chains left. So we are back and we have made our way all the way around with our single crochet row. Now we're going to connect it into the base. So connecting it into the base, we're going to slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base the same way that we did for the previous row. We all want to make sure though that we're working down towards the bottom and not up towards the shoulder. So just into that next available stitch, insert, yarn over, pull through everything, and now our row 1 is complete. Now we're going to get started on the following row. So in order to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. None of those slip stitches into the base count as a stitch, and flip our work. Now we're going to do our moss stitch. So what we're going to do is finding that last stitch from our previous row, not worked into any of those slip stitches into the base. We're going to insert with a single crochet. Then from here, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into that next stitch, making our way all the way across. Now we do want to make sure that once we reach that middle stitch, we're inserting our stitch marker into that same stitch. Then once we reach the end of the row, I'll meet everyone back. So we are back. We've just made our way across with our second row, which is our first moss stitch row. Now we're going to connect it into the base. So just like our previous row, we're going to slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base. Remember that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base and flip. Then we're going to do a second moss stitch row because it is going to match the 2 moss stitch, 1 single crochet row detail for the body. So now we're going to start this row with a chain 1, skip that first stitch, which should be a single crochet from our previous row, and into that next stitch, which should be a chain space, insert with a single crochet. Now we should all have 2 stitches so far for this row. From here again, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next, and continue on with this, making our way all the way across. Remember, into that same middle stitch, be sure to insert your stitch marker into that stitch. And just as a really quick tip, just to make sure that we have the same amount of stitches as our previous row, the last stitch of this row will be a chain space. Now, as a really quick tip, whenever we're doing our second moss stitch row, like I said, it is going to end in a chain space, so we should all have 1 stitch left at the end of the row. Now, just finding that next available stitch into the base, we're going to insert into there with a slip stitch, so closing it off the same way that we normally would. Then, to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base and flip. Now from here, for everyone, no matter what size we're making, we're all going to start with 10 singles, 10 half doubles, then I'll meet you back when we have those sets of stitches completed. So we are back. We have just completed our 10 single, 10 half doubles. Now from here until we reach our middle stitch, we're all going to do 1 double crochet into every stitch. Then I'll meet you back once we reach our middle stitch. So we are back and we've just made our way down to our middle stitch. So into that middle stitch, we're all going to do an increase of 3 double crochets just to make sure we maintain that middle stitch. So now that we have those 3 doubles, be sure to insert your stitch marker into the top of that middle stitch. Then from here, we're going to do 1 double crochet into every stitch until we have 20 stitches left. So we made our way down with our double crochets, leaving the last 20 stitches. Now we're going to close off the row with 10 halves, 10 single crochets, then I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So we've made our way down with our 4th row. We're now going to connect it into the base the same way that we've been doing this entire time. So just finding that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch, does not count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. Then from here, all we're going to do is continue to repeat our 3 previous rows until we get the sleeve length that we want, or until we don't have any more stitches left to work into the single crochet row that we did when we got started on the sleeve. That's completely up to you. Once we have that, do a chain up 1 and cut, then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We have just completed the entirety of our sleeve. Now I did a total of 10 rows and did a chain up 1 and cut, then just repeated everything that I did here on the other side. But now that we have both of our sleeves completed, we are all done. Last thing we're gonna have to do is simply weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, y'all. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye.